Okay, let me just emphasize a couple things for you. First of all, I guess I should emphasize the fact that A is going to be our argument underneath the radical. It's called a radicand. And then we're going to put n out here as the index of what kind of root we're talking about. So just remember that, keep that in mind. And I can say, it's kind of cool that I can say this. I can say 1 over n if I want to put that as an exponent. So if it's the square root, if I have the square root of a, I can also write a to the 1/2. And then, yeah, if I square it, guess what? I go back to a. Because I've undone what I did there. If I undo the square root by squaring it, then I'm back to a. And it still works, a to the 1/3, that's a third root. A to the 1/4, that's a fourth root. And I can always undo it by raising it to that power. So hopefully that makes good sense. It's different when n is even. When n is even and a is less than 0, if it's negative, there's not going to be any real roots for a negative number. Just think to yourself, if you took the square root of -3, well, let's say you'd taken something that seems easier as the square root of -4, you'd say, well, there's no real roots. I know, of course, that I can say 2i, but that's not real, is it? Okay, so if it's less than 0, not going to happen. If it is 0, there's no problem there. I can take the whatever root you want. It'll just be 0. There's no harm in that. And then, of course, if it's greater than 0, I'm going to get plus or minus, so that's 2. That's 2 of them. So if I take the square root of, let's say, 4, the square root of, well, let's say 9, that's plus or minus 3. I don't know which one I square. They both work. If I square plus 3, that gives me 9. If I square -3, that gives me 9. Okay. So either way it works, so I get 2. Then if it's odd over here, and it's less than 0, I do get a real root. For instance, on the, I feel like it was, well, it's recent anyway. If we said the third root of 27, then it's -3, right? So if it's an odd integer, oh, well, and that's less than 0. So there we go. A is less than 0. It's a lot less, -27. And I do get a real root, okay? And I'm allowed to have that negative sign if it's odd. We just did that. And one real root, if it's 0, of course it's the same, 0. Same as when it's even. That doesn't change. And then it's one real root, not 2. Notice over here where it was an even integer, it's 2. But here it's just 1, because if it's negative, I'm going to show it's negative. But if it's positive, then it must be positive, because the negative survives, okay? So if I say the square root of 27, it's just, sorry, the third root of 27, then it's, I'm going to get just plus 3. I can't fake -3 here. Over here I could. I don't know which I have, but over when it's odd, when n is odd, and it is, then I just get 1. So those are the differences there. And here we go, a little example, probably the best thing we could do. If we say we take 216 and we're looking for the third root, that's what that means there. Well, I'm going to get 1, right? This is this example up here. When a is less than 0, and I have an odd root right there. Okay. And what's that going to be? Well, that's going to be -6. So then they say that's -6. And, okay, so a is underneath, and I have an even one out there. Well, something times itself 4 times. It's going to be 3, right? And you say it's even, so I have to say plus or minus, because it could be either one. If it's an even index here, it would make negatives go away, so I don't know if it is or if it isn't. So it's plus or minus. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing down here. We're going to say 64 is underneath. I can't write suddenly. 64 underneath, and my root is 6 here. And let's see, I think, well, what times itself 6 times? Well, it's 2. Because, and the reason is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 64. So therefore my answer is 2. And 243 to the 5th power, 5th, why did I write 4? To the 5th root here. Well, that's going to be 3, isn't it? Because 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, that's 81, and then one more 3, yeah. That's 243. Okay, so my answer is 3.